Hey guys, this is Miss Nelson, and today you guys are going to be doing fraction to decimal notes, so converting between fractions and decimals. Okay, so if you look at the top of your notes, it says a decimal whose digits repeat in groups of one or more are called and these guys are called repeating decimals. Okay, and it tells you that a repeating decimal can be represented using bar notation. N right there. That's an O. Okay. And in bar notation, a bar is drawn over the digit or digits that repeat. So here in this example, you see that my 131313 is repeating. So we simply just rewrite it as 2.13 with this bar right here over the 1 and the 3. That shows you that just the 1 and the 3 are going to be repeating. So if we go down to the next line, if a decimal stops and does not repeat, it is called a terminating decimal. Think about it like the Terminator. It stops everything when it destroys it. Okay, so now let's get busy and actually start converting some of these. Okay, so let's start converting some of our fractions and decimals and vice versa. So it says, to turn a fraction to a decimal, our decimal system is based on powers of 10, such as 10, hundreds, and thousands. If the denominator of the fraction is a power of 10, you can just use place value to write the fraction as a decimal. So this should be a good review for you. So we see here that it's 7/10. Sorry guys, it decided it was going to move it. Let's try that again. So we see here that it says 7/10. Okay, so we put the 7 on top of the fraction, 10 on the bottom. So when we write it as a decimal, we write it with the 7 in the tenths place. So if we have 19 hundredths, like we do in our second example, 19 is going to go on top, and 100 is going to go on the bottom. So when we write it in a decimal, it's going to be 0.19 because that 9 right there is still in the hundredths place. Our last example, 105 thousandths. So we're going to write 105 on top, and then we're going to put 1,000 in the bottom because that 5 is in the thousandths place. So to write a decimal, 0.105. Again, that 5 being in the thousandths place. Okay, so let's go on to the next piece. It says, if the denominator of a fraction is not a power of 10, then you need to apply I do, which is kind of a trick to help you remember which one needs to go inside the division box, to find the decimal. I do means inside divided by the outside. So it very simply just tells you what number goes inside the box, the 3 here, and then the division house, and then the 8 goes on the outside. Now, over here, this is something new that you guys have not learned up to this point. It says that A divided by B is the same thing as A over B, and B cannot be 0. So basically, all this is saying is if over here, this fraction of 3/8 means the same thing as 3 divided by 8. When we get in 7th grade, they're going to kind of get away from using this A divided by B, and you guys are going to see a lot of things in fractions, and you are just expected to know that fractions mean to divide as long as your denominator is not 0. Denominator cannot be 0 because you cannot divide a number by 0. You can do it the other way. You can do 0 divided by a number, but you cannot do a number divided by 0. So let's get back to our example, and we're going to divide. 8 goes into 3. So I know it's going to be a decimal, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to extend my line here on top, and I'm going to put a decimal on top and bottom. So 8 does not go into 3, but I know that 8 can go into 30. 8 goes into 30 3 times, which is 24. So I'm going to subtract, I get 6. in 7th grade, and you guys should have learned this in 6th grade, we don't have like remainders. So I have to add another 0 and bring it down. 8 goes into 60 7 times, which is 56. That leaves me with 4. So again, I add a 0, carry it down. And 8 goes into 40 5 times because that will actually zero me out. Okay, so 3/8 as a decimal form is 0.375, or you say it 375 thousandths. Okay, so let's go on and see if you guys can do some. So express each fraction or mixed number as a decimal. So we are going to apply I do to all of these. Okay, so my top number goes inside the division house. So 3 is going to go inside and 10 is going to go outside. So again, I know that 10 does not go into 3, so I know I'm going to have a decimal, so I'm going to go ahead and add that in. Doesn't go into 3, but it should go into 30. So 10 goes into 30 3 times, which actually gives me 30, and I zero out. So my answer is 0.3. 0.3 is equivalent to 3/10. Okay, so number 2, you see that we have a mixed number. So a mixed number, you can do several things. You can either use around the world and turn it into an improper fraction, but the easiest thing to do is to take this whole number and just go ahead and carry it and write it down in front of the decimal. So now I'm just using the fraction to divide like we did in the previous examples. So 1 goes inside the house, 2 goes outside. And you should know what 1/2 is as a decimal, but if you don't, we're going to divide it anyway. We go ahead and put my decimal. 2 does not go into 1, so I'm going to add a 0 underneath the division house. 2 goes into 10 5 times, which zeroes me out. So now I'm going to bring this 0.5 and I'm going to put it right here behind the decimal. So my answer becomes 6.5. Okay, so let's look at our last 2 examples. This time it's telling us that we are going to need bar notation. Okay, so that means we're going to have repeating decimals at some point. So we're still using I do. So 1 divided by 11. 1 goes inside the house, 11 goes outside. I know I'm going to be dealing with decimals, so I'm going to go ahead and add it. 11 does not go into 1. 11 also does not go into 10, so I have to add another 0 and keep going. 11 goes into 100 9 times, which is 99. So that gives me a 1. Add another 0, bring it down. 11 does not go into 10, but it will go into 100 9 times. So what you should see here is that your 0 9 is going to keep showing up if we keep dividing. So therefore, to write it with bar notation, 1/11 is 0.09 repeating. So only the repeating bar goes over the 0 and the 9. Okay, our last example on this side, 8 1/3. So again, I'm going to take that 8 and I'm going to bring it out. So now I'm only dealing with my 1/3 as a fraction. So 1 inside the house, 3 outside. It's hard to write with on here. So 3 does not go into 1. 3 does go into 10. It goes 3 times, which is 9. So I have 1 left over. So I'm going to add a 0 and bring it down. That means that 3 goes into 10 again, 3 times, which is 9. So what you should start seeing is that my 3 is going to be repeating. So like I did in the example over here and above, I'm going to bring my 3 over here and I'm going to put the line over the 3. Now I don't need both of my 3's that were originally written. I just need one because it's going to keep saying 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 if I keep dividing. Okay, so 8 1/3 as a decimal is 8.3 repeating. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's turn it on the back side for your notes, or y'all's is your second page. Mine's on the back of mine. and we're going to fill this in. So now we're switching it up, and we are going decimals to fractions. So it says that every terminating decimal can be written as a fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, 1,000, or a greater power of 10. So, in other words, what this means is, in order to write a decimal into a fraction, you are going to take the numbers behind the decimal and they go to the numerator. So I'm going to say numbers behind the decimal go to numerator. And remember, that is the top of our fraction. Then you look at the last digit to figure out your denominator. Okay, it's taking my pen a little bit to try to catch up to what I wrote. Or it's just going to stay there. You know, these boards have a complete mind of their own sometimes. Okay, so you take the numbers behind the decimal and put them as your numerator. Then you look at the last digit to figure out your denominator. Okay, so let's see if I can get it up here. I think my board's kind of having a glitch. Yep, it's having a glitch. Okay, so very, very simple. Okay, so all we need to do, and my board's frozen now. Awesome. So I'm going to pause this video for just a minute so I can get the board fixed, and then we'll come back to it. All right. Okay, so we're back. Sorry about that, guys. I had to pause it and shut down my board and bring it back up and stuff. Okay, anyway, so you see I finished writing the word denominator. So now we're going to practice this, and it says you always simplify. Okay, so we always have to simplify our fractions when we are done working with them. So it says, determine the fraction of the aquarium made up by each fish. Express the fraction in simplest form. So mollies. Mollies are over here, and this is 0.2. Okay, or to read it, we know that the 2 is in the tenths place, so I know my denominator is going to be the 10, and then the 2 is going to become my numerator. So my fraction becomes 2/10, but that's not simplified. So remember, to simplify a fraction, you have to think of what number can I divide both 2 and 10 by. That'll be the same number that will get these numbers smaller. I can divide both of these numbers by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 1 and 5 have nothing in common, so 0.2 is 1/5 as a fraction. So if I come over here and look at guppies, they are 0.25. So my 5 is in my hundredths place value, so that means my denominator is going to be 100. And now I take my 25 and I write the whole thing on top, because the whole number that you see goes on top as your fraction. So now I did the same thing I just did over here in my previous one. I need to decide what number will go evenly into both 25 and 100. There are several, but I know that 25 will go into both of them. You could also divide them by 5, and then you would have to simplify again if you use 5. 25 divided by 5 is 1. 25 divided by 25 is 1, correction. 100 divided by 25 is 4. So 0.25 as a fraction is 1/4. Okay, our last example here, it says Jorge reads that 0.72 of his favorite cereal was whole grain. Determine what fraction of the cereal is whole grain wheat expressed in simplest form. So if I look, this 2 is in the hundredths place. Okay, so I know that my denominator is going to be 100. And following pattern of what we've previously done, my 72 goes on top. So now this one's a little bit harder. So I need a number that goes into 72 and 100. 2 can go into both of these numbers. So 72 divided by 2, or what is half of 72, okay? So you could come over here and do 72 divided by 2 and figure out what that is. I'm going to tell you that the answer is 36. And 100 divided by 2, or half of 100, is 50. So we look at this answer and see if we can simplify again. 36 and 50, I know I can divide them by 2 again. And I could have divided by a higher number over here for my original if you had seen that 4 could have done it. 36 divided by 2, or half of 32, is 18. Half of 50 is 25. Now 18 and 25 do not share any factors, so that is as low as we can go. Okay, so I know these notes were a little bit longer. Sometimes they're going to be about this length or a little bit longer. Most of the time they're going to be a little bit shorter. With this being our first video and all, I just wanted to make sure that you had time, and obviously we had technical difficulties. So this is what it's going to be like from us taking our notes at home from this point forward. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Bye.